But before I get started with some actual spinning, I just want to run through a few basics with you. First one is, why do I like spinning? And why should anybody like spinning? It's a creative process. It's something that is practical and absorbing, and it can be technical as you like, or not, whichever way you feel about it. The other good thing about it is it can actually help you lose weight. Not because you're cycling any great distance with one leg, but mainly because if you spin luxury yarns, things like silk and cashmere and alpaca, it doesn't go very well with sugar and cream and chocolate. So basically you won't want to eat cakes, biscuits, sweeties, chocolate. You just want to keep your spinning clean. So do lots of spinning and a lot less eating. But that's not the fun side of it really. Especially when somebody brings you in a rock cake and a cup of tea, which is very welcome, I must admit. There are a few basics to remember about spinning a yarn. Before starting to spin, you need to decide which hand you're going to use forward to control the twist and which hand you're going to use backwards to control the fibre. Ideally, you're going to make your mind up which you want to use at the start and keep on using it. I do know people who spin both ways, and it can be useful if you're getting cramp in your hands on occasions. But to be honest, the more adept you become at using one hand for one process and the other for the other, the more even your yarns will become. It's a bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. Not everybody can do it. And spinning is a little bit like that, because you've got two hands doing two separate things and your foot doing something else. So it's definitely a woman's occupation, you know, multitasking and all that. Another thing to remember, rubbish in, rubbish out. If you put rubbish in your carding or your combing, you're going to get rubbish out in your yarns. So by using clean fleece, choosing a fleece that doesn't have a lot of double cuts, in that the shearer hasn't gone over the sheep twice and put extra cut bits in, doesn't have lots of vegetation, lots of bits of bramble and twigs and things like that, and not too dirty. It means that you will have less work to do in the processing and less chance of having wool that is full of bits of dirt and rubbish. Some of it is quite hard to actually get out once it's spun into the yarn, and I always use washed fibre when I'm spinning. I don't ever use dirty fibre, mainly because it makes your wheel dirty. It actually clogs up the orifice with grease and dirt, and if you start spinning something fine like silk, there's a good chance it'll either make it very dirty and sticky, or it'll actually break it as well. Fine like silk, there's a good chance it'll either make it very dirty and sticky, or it'll actually break it as well. Particularly if you get into doing some fine spinning, the grease and dirt that builds up will actually affect the way that your spinning works, and you'll find that it's sticking on the inside of the orifice, and it won't allow the yarn to go through onto the bobbin properly. Next thing to remember is the nature of twist. Twist will actually jump the thick bits and hit the thin bits. So anytime you're spinning and you're producing yarn that isn't super smooth, isn't consistent, you'll find that you've got thick under twisted bits and thin over twisted bits. So if that's the kind of yarn that you want to produce, and you want to have slobs and yarns with lots of different interest in them, yarns that are spiral twists and slubby yarns, then you can actually leave lumps in the wool to help you get a textured yarn. So we're not always trying to produce super smooth, super fine wool. Sometimes we want something that has a lot of slubs and a lot of character to it, and there are ways of putting that into your yarn. If you think of the rubbish in, rubbish out scenario, if you put lots of noils and small cuts into your wool, there's a good chance that you'll get noils and slobby bits in the actual finished yarn, and sometimes that's what we're after. But to start you off spinning, I would like to be able to think that you could learn to produce wools that are super smooth, super clean, and even as well. You can always put lumps in deliberately. If you can't spin without putting lumps in, you don't have any choice. So to my mind, the more choices you've got, the better your chances of producing a decent yarn. I'm going to use the roving that I produced in my previous video. I just slot that through the leader again and double it back. Get the wheel going in a clockwise direction. Let the twist build up. Now, once this twist starts developing, it's developing at a given speed, and I've set the wheel to produce a certain amount of twist at a certain rate. This is basically the rate that I can control the fibre at. It doesn't matter whether I want 20 twists to the inch, 10 twists to the inch, 5 twists to the inch, or 50 twists to the inch. I can still make the wheel go at the speed that I want it to go at. If I wanted more twist, I could just wait while it builds up, or I could put it onto a higher ratio and let the wheel do the job for me. The main thing is that I've got the wheel going at a speed that I can control the wool. If it's going too fast, it could be building up twist so fast that I can't stop it and the whole thing ends up as a big twisted mess, or it could be producing twist so slowly that I'm having to wait too long for the twist, and then I'll just get bored. What I want to be able to do is to keep a steady rhythm going with my hands drafting the fibre so that I'm producing a smooth, even yarn all the way through. Now, the way that I spin is a little bit different to how a lot of people are taught, in that I don't keep my fingers back on the twist and make sure that the twist doesn't run into the drafting zone. Now, the drafting zone is this triangular section here. If you look at this, you can see there's a definite triangle shape there, and how much fibre there is in that drafting zone will determine the thickness of the yarn I'm producing. And bear in mind that this is only one single yarn, so when it's actually finished and plied, the thickness of the yarn is going to be different. So my finished plied yarn is going to be that thickness. Now, one of the reasons why I've doubled some yarn back as well is to allow myself to see just how much bounce there is in the wool, to see how tightly it's twisted, and to see how thick it is. Because at the end of the day, I want to be able to produce a yarn that is usable for a given project. I feel that that has a little bit too much twist in it. Now, at the moment I'm spinning on the medium ratio, which is about 7.5 twists to the inch, or 7.5 twists for each treadle. So I'm going to put it back onto the 5.5 twist, 5.5 ratio. This means that for every treadle, the wheel will turn the flyer slightly slower. If I keep my hands working at the same speed, I'm treadling at the same speed, that is going to give me less twist in the yarn. So I'm going to do a little sample of that, spinning at this speed, just to see how much twist I'm going to have in the finished thread. So I'm going to stop there, take it back, let it hang. That's good. Now, already the fibre is a lot less twisted, it's a lot softer, a lot more bouncy to the feel, and it looks as if it's not strangled. So for me, this is a much better yarn for this type of wool. So I'm going to break that sample off, and I'm going to keep that to one side. Now, that sample will tell me, when I come to ply my two threads together, that that's how much twist and the angle of the twist it needs to be a balanced yarn.